Welcome, beautiful Paris Saint Germain family. This is kind of a big video. Marquinhos or Zabarnyi, who is said to be Paris Saint Germain's starting centre back in the right centre back position alongside William Pacho. William Pacho last season, he played his first Champions League season, had like 1-2 seasons with Frankfurt, came in with not the most experience, but has already cemented himself as the first starter on the centre back sheet. When Luis Enrique is going to play his centre backs, Pacho is their first name. That's how good he was last season. So obviously there are more question marks on Marquinhos. He's getting older. We obviously know about his time at PSG in recent time. And Zabarnyi was recently signed for 63 million euros. Paris Saint-Germain spent nearly over 2 months trying to get this transfer finalized. And it's finally finalized with Ilya Zabarnyi obviously getting his debut versus Nantes this weekend. Marquinhos was obviously not used, getting some rest after starting the UEFA Super Cup final versus Spurs. And now we come to the situation, Marquinhos or Zabarnyi. Before we do that, I did like a cheeky picture statistics. For example, here is data MB. I don't like data MB that much, and you will see one of these stats are completely fugazi. The defensive duels, we'll come to it later, but this is just a simple, I guess, graph between the two players. And you can see Marquinhos is the pink one, aerial percentage, carrying passes, forward passes, progressive passes, but that's obviously due to Paris Saint-Germain having way more possession than Bournemouth. Paris Saint-Germain averaged 68% possession for Paris Saint-Germain only in the league. Bournemouth are averaging around 48.5%. Defensive duels, Zabarnyi takes it by landslide and passes possession one as well. Here's some other stat. Long balls, Marquinhos completes 4.4 to Zabarnyi's 3.3 with a much better percentage, but that obviously is because Zabarnyi probably takes more risky long passes. Next one is interceptions. Zabarnyi a little bit better, but obviously because Bournemouth have less of the ball, that means there are more moments where he has to make defensive actions. Tackles the same, recovery basically the same, clearances double the amount, but once again, Bournemouth have less of the possession. Ground duels 1.8, 1.8, basically similar percentage. Aerial duels basically the same once again. And that's basically when it comes to the statistic. And as we saw in the beginning on the data MB, look at defensive duels. They're saying Zabarnyi is here and Marquinhos is here. These stats right here are all from SofaScore. And then when you look at the aerial duels and the ground duels, that difference does not exist. So I've told this so many times and I will continue to tell it. Do not ever use data MB. I think it looks good. The circle graph and everything, but it doesn't make any sense. Well, going back to Marquinhos or Zabarnyi, we obviously got to see Zabarnyi in his debut. I remember 2 questionable passes early on when there was a little bit of pressure on him, but he did get used, going into the game and so on. It just got better and better throughout the game. I really liked him in space. When he has a defender, an attacker next to him in a 1v1 position or something, he's not scared. He's not looking for his teammates to help him. No, he's there to win the ball and calm the situation down. A lot of responsibility. And that's the thing with Ilya Zabarnyi. I've heard from Premier League fans and other fans as well, is that Ilya Zabarnyi is very experienced. Despite him only being 23 years of age, he has a lot of good captain material personality. So the first thing we have to discuss now that Zabarnyi Marquinhos, we have to talk about Marquinhos. Where are we as Paris Saint-Germain supporters with Marquinhos, and where am I with Marquinhos? I think Marquinhos obviously came into the club in 2013, had to fight himself into the squad, was sometimes played as a right back, then basically became a starter when under Unai Emery and then under Thomas Tuchel, and that's where prime Marquinhos came, playing that libera role between the centre back and the DM. Then I felt he was really good in the 2021 season. I felt he was the best centre back in the world in 2021. Marquinhos just kept it going, and then that Madrid game happened. And we all remember it too well. And the thing is, it wasn't just that Madrid game, because I still remember on the podcast here on the channel that we were talking about Marquinhos league campaign going into that game. And, it was a little bit underwhelming when you compare it to previous seasons. So we already had a little bit of a downfall. Then Madrid happened, and that was a complete bombastico. I mean, the mistakes, just how people saw, how people portrayed it. And ever since then, the mistake have continued. In 22, 23, there were some mistakes. In 23, 24, there was some mistakes. And even last season when we won the UEFA Champions League, we all remember Marquinhos slipping on his ass versus Arsenal, giving them a goal towards the end and making the game a bit interesting. We all remember his mistakes in the group stage. We remember his mistake versus Liverpool. But despite all of that, we still managed to win the UCL. And he still managed to have good performances. But that mistake, as a supporter, I was sometimes concerned about Marquinhos because I was scared something bad was going to happen. So that's the stance with Marquinhos. Before winning the UCL, I said this has to be Marquinhos' last season. And now, we won the UCL, we reached the Club World Cup final, we're a bit, complacent, we're a bit comfortable. So I was like, yeah, I mean, we can keep Marquinhos one more season. And it definitely looks like this will be Marquinhos' last season at Paris Saint Germain, finishing off the season, playing in the World Cup with Brazil, and then, maybe going back to Brazil, probably going to Saudi before that, getting a little bit of a paycheck. But that's how I feel about Marquinhos. I think IQ wise and all the majority of the abilities that he used to have, he still has. It's mostly the athleticism, and then it's something with that mentality. I remember Marquinhos in 2021, like he was a true captain. Him and Kimpembe in the centre back positions. I don't feel the exact more. That's why I say Marquinhos has the captain armband on, but I don't think he's the captain. I don't think he is the captain of the team. If you say to the players, who do you think is the more vocal, takes responsibility? I don't think the PSG players will be pointing at Marquinhos. So that's another thing that will happen. Now going to Zabarnyi, he's obviously coming in as the new signing, more comfortable on the ball. I mean, definitely is better in duels. I mean, better in aerial duels, better in defensive duels as well. Obviously, it's still early on. I have barely watched anything of him at Bournemouth, so it'll be interesting to see how Zabarnyi performs. So now that we got Zabarnyi's situation going into the season, Marquinhos' situation, who's going to be the starter? I think Luis Enrique, because we haven't seen this before at PSG, because, he got rid of Neymar and Verratti and all of them. We never saw, a player with Marquinhos' stature, how Luis Enrique is going to put the new signing ahead of him as a starter. So I think for majority now of the beginning of the season, Marquinhos will be set as the main starter. And one thing actually interesting about Marquinhos is that we haven't really thought about is Marquinhos has never had this tough centre-back competition since Thiago Silva Kimpembe. And guess what? That was the best version of Marquinhos. The left centre-back spot, we have Pacho and we have Lucas Hernandez, Lucas Beraldo. So that spot he's not going to be competing for. He's going to be competing for a right centre-back spot, which he's never had this competition. And now this young, new Ukrainian Ilya Zabarnyi coming in for that much money, 63 million. That's the most we've paid for a defender after Ashraf Hakimi. So Marquinhos probably sees himself, a lot of competition. And this could potentially give us the best version, of Marquinhos in the last 3 seasons. Maybe Marquinhos wants to end his PSG last season in a great way, especially now that we got the competition behind him in Zabarnyi. And I talked about mistakes. We even saw Marquinhos in the UEFA Super Cup final. A bit embarrassing. Even in the Chelsea game, you just see his lack of athleticism is impacting his game and impacting PSG as well. So I think the competition from Zabarnyi is a great thing. Great for Zabarnyi to have a player of his quality in the team, but also great for Marquinhos because it can up his level. So I think this is going to be strong competition for majority of the season. Marquinhos actually sometimes he gets injury prone, like a cheeky 3 weeks. Then Zabarnyi, could cement himself. We even saw reports that Zabarnyi could potentially be playing even as a right back in some moments when Hakimi is rested and we play Zabarnyi, Marquinhos, Pacho, and Nuno Mendes in the defense. That's also something we could see at Paris Saint Germain. But for the moment, I still think Marquinhos is the starter in Luis Enrique's mind. But when you look at the athletic ability, when you look at, he's nearly 10 years younger than Marquinhos. I think it's quite clear that somewhere in the season, Zabarnyi is going to become Paris Saint Germain starting centre-back, but with tough competition between the two. The biggest thing will obviously come to the biggest game for both players. Zabarnyi, I want to see him in big games. Playing against Nantes is not the same playing against Madrid in the UEFA Champions League. So that's a question mark I think me and Luis Enrique and everyone else has on Zabarnyi because he really hasn't been playing those big games because he was playing in Bournemouth. And Marquinhos, obviously, he will have the advantage going into those big games because we've seen Marquinhos in big games. He is experienced. The pressure won't affect him as much as a new signing. So we'll see. That's the door is open at the moment for tough competition for Marquinhos. And I think this is a great thing. But I do think Zabarnyi will overtake his spot. I just need to see more of Zabarnyi to be more confident in that opinion. But you guys let me know. Who do you think should be the starting centre-back for Paris Saint Germain this season? Marquinhos or Ilya Zabarnyi? That's been it from Boy PSG. And hopefully guys have enjoyed this video. And as usual, allez Paris.